These Phineas and Ferb songs never saw the light of day. They were lost, deleted, and never got used, be it because an episode was running too long, or because the concept wasn't quite clever enough. Some are just demos, while others are fully fledged songs that never get a chance to become amazing hits, beloved as much as Busted, Simp, or There's a Platypus Controlling Me. These are the Phineas and Ferb songs you've never heard and might never hear again. Unless you have, because you're into these super obscure things about the show, but I really doubt you have because they're really hard to come across. Catchy title, I know. Hit the subscribing-ator for some more Phineas and Ferb videos, and let's jump right into it. Season 2's episode, Roller Coaster the Musical, is pretty much a remake of the very first Phineas and Ferb episode ever, this time however in musical form, with the characters doing meta humor on how they're repeating the same exact things they've already done on the first day of summer. Now, even though the actual episode contains 9 songs already, the songwriters actually came up with a few more that didn't quite make the cut. The first one is titled Where the Heck Were We? And you would have seen Buford, Baljeet, Lawrence and Irving explain why they weren't present in the first episode of the show.
When Phineas and Ferb built the roller coaster, we mysteriously were not around. But looking back on that day now, doesn't it seem really strange how we were nowhere to be found?
Of course, the pilot was meant to be concise and explain the main premise of the show rather briefly, so there wasn't much room to introduce all of these guys as well. So John Colton Barry wrote this song to give us in-world explanations as to why they weren't around. Baljeet was in school doing some extra credit science, while Buford was waiting for him right outside to beat him up. Lawrence was restoring an old antique appliance, whereas Irving admits he hadn't yet worked up the courage to meet the boys in person.
It's an engineering marvel, I can't believe I missed it. I would have heard 20, 30 times if I'd have been there, I'd have kissed it.
Another cut song from this very episode would have been the Farmer's Wife song, which didn't have much of a title. You would have seen this woman, the farmer's wife, reflect on her whole shtick and complain about how stuff conveniently keeps falling out of the sky to save her husband's reckless butt, while she never gets anything she wants.
I'll swim the tallest sea, I'll climb the leafiest tree, I'll stand above the clouds, I'll finally say it out loud.
So what does she want?
I want a puppy.
It seems that right after the song, a puppy would have fallen out of the sky for her to catch, giving her an actually happy ending for once.
Oh, he's adorable.
Alas, this never happened on the show, and her dream never came true. Shame. Another song idea written by John Colton Barry that never saw the light of day is titled Princess. This one was supposed to be sung by Jeremy in Make Play, the season 2 episode where Candace switches places with her doppelganger, Princess Baldegund of Druselstein. Here Jeremy would have sung about the ways you can tell whether someone's a princess or not, making a few references to Cinderella and The Princess and the Frog.
She's graceful, upper class, and all her shoes are made of glass. There's a good chance that her daddy's a king.
Now this is confusing, so try to follow along. It seems this song was dedicated to real Candace while pretending to be Baldegund. However, it was later decided that Jeremy shouldn't really have feelings for someone else who isn't Candace, even if that someone really is Candace pretending to be someone else. Yet, because Jeremy couldn't possibly have known that really was Candace, the song was ultimately scrapped. This resulted in Princess being replaced by Jeremy and his band playing an old season 1 song, Do Nothing Day, first heard in The Best Lazy Day Ever. This is pretty interesting as this change turned Make Play into one of those very few Phineas and Ferb episodes to not contain a new original song, and there's really just a handful of those.
There ought to be some kind of test, you know, part written and part west. But here's some ways to prove that she's royalty.
Next, we have the episode Wizard of Oz, the show's amazing Wizard of Oz parody with Candace as Dorothy and Doof as the Wicked Witch. You may remember that each main character in Candace's dream is introduced with their own unique song. Yet, originally, Baljeet's I Want to Be Cool song had an entirely different tune and lyrics. In fact, the title is pretty much the only thing that stayed the same, everything else was entirely different.
I got everything under
fact, this one was meant to be a duet between him and Candace, which unfortunately sounded terribly out of character for her.
Rather than hanging by your underpants, come on down and take a chance. There's a wizard in Bustopolis who courtesy is no fool. Maybe he can make you cool.
The girl just sounded way too happy to have Baljeet join her on her little trip to Bustopolis. So given how the episode focused on how she really couldn't stand the world of Odd and its inhabitants, Baljeet more than anyone else it seems, they decided to scrap it and rewrite it entirely as a Baljeet solo, with Candace interrupting him halfway through it, tired of his little musical, which is 100 times more in character.
There'll be nothing ever stopping us. We're going to Bustopolis. Everyone will eat our dust. Our journey's pure, our cause is just.
But the biggest change in the episode, song-wise, involved Buford's musical number, I Want Nothing. Let me play the entirety of the final version of the song that made it into the episode, so you guys can actually enjoy its complexity.
Nothing. Well, at least it was short.
Well, initially, this was meant to be a fully fledged song like everyone else's, with the kid over-explaining how he doesn't really want anything. If he ever needs something, he just takes it.
I got everything I need, but I don't what I take. I'm fully self-sufficient, everything is just Jake. So don't buy me no presents, no, that would be a stupid mistake.
In the end though, because the episode was running too long, they just got rid of this one and turned it into a joke. And even though I kinda like that song, and it kinda works better this way, it was a pretty smart way to cut corners as well.
I don't want nothing, nothing, let me tell you something, you can spread it around the neighborhood. I don't want nothing, man, I'm good.
Moving on to a couple of lost songs you might have heard, we should probably mention the cut songs from the two Phineas and Ferb movies. I'm talking about Mysterious Force from the Second Dimension movie and Step Into the Great Unknown from Candace Against the Universe. You might know them almost all too well if you're very familiar with the show, but I can assure you a lot of people never heard them, especially if you're not from an English-speaking country, which is at least half of you guys, so I got you covered. You see, both movies were running too long, so some cuts really needed to be made. Mysterious Force was lucky enough to get fully animated before being cut, so it was included as a deleted scene in the movie's DVD release. Step Into the Great Unknown instead never actually got a fully animated version. All we have is this animatic, which is still more than what other cut numbers and songs even got, so I guess that's something. Other songs from the movie don't have a fully animated version either, like The Universe Is Against Me and We're Back, which are featured in the credits, yet Step Into the Great Unknown didn't really get that either. Both songs, however, were lucky enough to be included in the movie's respective soundtracks, so this is how you might have heard them. Yet, because of this, these songs were only dubbed in just a handful of languages instead of the usual 40+ languages. Mysterious Force was dubbed in Castilian and Latin Spanish, Brazilian Portuguese, Polish, and German, as they're the only other dubs the Second Dimension soundtrack was released in, while Step Into the Great Unknown only has an English and an Italian version, despite the soundtrack being released in quite a few other countries. Back to Buford, our ears were denied his majestic singing voice on two more occasions. First, we have The Elf Police, which is a song that was supposed to be part of the Phineas and Ferb Holiday Favorites album, along with the songs from Season 2's Christmas special. Here, Buford would have explained how there's a whole elf branch dedicated to monitoring children's behaviors all year round to determine whether they belong on the naughty list, which sounds fair and all, except Buford's take is that the elves are eagerly waiting for you to screw up so they can get some dirt on you and ruin your Christmas.
Elf police with their x-ray stare can see you chew gum in class and cheat at solitaire. Do anything bad and you better beware, cause the elf police see everywhere.
It's not clear why the song never saw the light of day, although if I had to guess, I assume they had a fixed number of songs to add to the album, and the writers just found the others more amusing. Still, they could have gotten rid of one of those traditional Christmas song covers to make room for a Buford song, like Run Run Rudolph. It's not bad, but I'd rather have an original one.
We don't have elf run jails. But if we did, they'd be full of people who all year woulda kinda wish they'd been gooder. So be good, because the elf police see you everywhere. The elf police can see you everywhere.
While we're on the subject of this Christmas special, there's also a minuscule chance some of you missed 2 more songs from it. This is because the episode both has a shorter 20-minute version and a longer one that's about 35 minutes long. So those of you who only watched the shorter version didn't really get to listen to What Does He Want?, a song about Candace trying to think of the perfect Christmas gift for Jeremy, and Where Did We Go Wrong?, which sees Phineas and the gang upset for being on the naughty list. Blasted elf police. Still, these don't really count, in my opinion, as lost songs since they did make it on TV and on streaming services. I'm here to inform you in case you didn't know. But wait! There is more. Another Buford song that never made it into the show is called You're Wrong. If you remember, in the episode Summer Belongs to You, Phineas and Ferb want to fly around the earth and follow the sun to have 24 hours of continuous daylight. Despite Phineas's attempts to confuse Buford with his sorcerer's ways, the bully thinks such a thing is impossible, and here is where he would have performed the song, telling Phineas how dumb his plan sounds.
'Cause when that sun goes down, you're gonna look like a clown. Like I said all along, you're completely wrong. You're wrong. You're completely wrong.
Because this one is kinda repetitive and the episode was already long enough, and possibly because it kinda would have made Buford seem too antagonistic towards the boys, it was ultimately cut. Finally, the last song we're addressing today is Good Guy, which fittingly enough is from the final episode of the show's original run, Last Day of Summer. The song was originally written for Doofenshmirtz to perform right after Vanessa opens his eyes, explaining that she feels he's not an evil person after all, but rather a good guy with a treacherous past who doesn't quite know what he wants. So Doof comes up with the song on the spot, while quickly realizing that he doesn't really know where to start when it comes to being good.
There'd be a lot less double dealing, cheating and stealing, scheming, plotting, lying and concealing, a little more empathy and a lot less stabbing in the back.
I absolutely think a song here was needed, given how this was such a major development for his character, regardless of how he eventually goes back to evil, because sure, Vanessa's speech was eye-opening, but it was delivered very suddenly and gave Doof such a huge change of heart. In just a few seconds, he kinda needs to explore this idea a little more in detail. In the episode, he just agrees that, yeah, you're right, okay, I'm gonna change for good now, which he ultimately didn't, but that was the intention. So honestly, a song to explore his thoughts here would have been ideal. Unfortunately, Good Guy isn't exactly deep and thought-provoking, so it's not really a tragedy that it didn't make it into the episode, but it would have highlighted how lost Doof is when trying to be good. I just would have gone for a slightly more, introspective one. There's quite a few more unused and cut songs from the show, and I bet there's plenty more that never even got leaked and got to us. Yet, out of all the available ones, I feel these are the most interesting ones. But since there's quite a few more, I might make another video on the topic later down the line, especially if more songs get leaked, and of course, if you're interested. With that said though, as always, I thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Ciao!